Hello and welcome to God Talk. I'm JC. Today's Bible reading is going to be out of Leviticus 15, 16, and 17, as well as Acts 18. So if you have your Bibles, go ahead and open up Leviticus. And if you haven't subscribed to our channel already, please subscribe now. It really helps us out. As well as if you have any comments, any questions, or anything like that, just go ahead and leave them in the comment area. You never know if your question might really help someone else out in their Christian search or Christianity. All right, and I'll do the best I can to answer them. Let's see. So Leviticus 15. Bugger. All right, Leviticus 15 reads, "The Lord gave Moses and Aaron the following regulations for the people of Israel. When any man has a discharge from his penis, the discharge is unclean, whether the penis runs with it or is stopped up by it. Any bed in which he sits or lies is unclean. Anyone who touches his bed or sits on anything that the man has sat on must wash his clothes and take a bath, and he remains unclean until evening. Anyone who touches the man with a discharge must wash his clothes and take a bath, and he remains unclean until evening. If the man with the discharge spits on anyone who is ritually clean, the person must wash his clothes and take a bath, and he remains unclean until evening. Any saddle or seat on which the man with the discharge sits is unclean. Anyone who touches anything on which the man sits is unclean until evening. Anyone who carries anything on which the man sat must wash his clothes and take a bath, and he remains unclean until evening. If a man who has a discharge touches one of you without first having washed his hands, you must wash your clothes and take a bath, and you remain unclean until evening. Any clay pot that the man touches must be broken, and any wooden bowl that he touches must be washed. After the man is cured of his discharge, he must wait 7 days and then wash his clothes and take a bath in fresh spring water, and he will be ritually clean. On the 8th day he shall take 2 doves or 2 pigeons to the entrance of the tent of the Lord's presence and give them to the priest. The priest shall offer one of them as a sin offering and the other as a burnt offering. In this way he will perform the ritual of purification for the man. When the man has an emission of semen, he must bathe his whole body, and he remains unclean until evening. Anything made of cloth or leather on which the semen falls must be washed, and it remains unclean until evening. After sexual intercourse, both the man and the woman must take a bath, and they remain unclean until evening. When a woman has her monthly period, she remains unclean for 7 days. Anyone who touches her is unclean until evening. Anything on which she sits or lies during her monthly period is unclean. Any who touch her bed or anything on which she has sat must wash their clothes and take a bath, and they remain unclean until evening. If a man has sexual intercourse with her during her period, he is contaminated by her impurity and remains unclean for 7 days, and any bed on which he lies is unclean. If a woman has a flow of blood for several days outside her monthly period, or if her flow continues beyond her regular period, she remains unclean as long as the flow continues, just as she is during her monthly period. Any bed in which she lies or anything in which she sits during this time is unclean. Any who touch them are unclean and must wash their clothes and take a bath. They remain unclean until evening. After her flow stops, she must wait 7 days, and then she will be ritually clean. On the 8th day she shall take 2 doves or 2 pigeons to the priest at the entrance of the tent of the Lord's presence. The priest shall offer one of them as a sin offering and the other as a burnt offering. In this way he will perform the ritual of purification for him. The Lord told Moses to warn the people of Israel about her uncleanliness, so that they will not defile the temple of his camp. If they did, they would be killed. These are the regulations about a man who has a discharge or an emission of semen, a woman during her monthly period, or a man who has sexual intercourse with a woman who is ritually unclean. Leviticus 16. The Lord spoke to Moses after the death of the 2 sons of Aaron who were killed when they offered unholy fire to the Lord. He said, "Tell your brother Aaron that only at the proper time he is to go behind the curtain to the most holy place, because it is where I appear in a cloud above the lid of the covenant box. If he disobeys, he will be killed. He may enter the most holy place only after he has brought a young bull for a sin offering and a ram for a burnt offering." Then the Lord gave the following instructions. Before Aaron goes into the most holy place, he must take a bath and put on the priestly garments, the linen robe and shorts, the belt, and the turban. The community of Israel shall shall give Aaron 2 male goats for a sin offering, and a ram for a burnt offering. He shall offer a bull as a sacrifice to take away his only sins, and those of his family. Then he shall take the 2 goats to the entrance of the tent of the Lord's presence. There he shall draw lots using 2 stones, one marked for the Lord, and the other for Azazel. Aaron shall sacrifice a goat chosen by the lot for the Lord, and offer it as a sin offering. The goat chosen for Azazel shall be presented alive to the Lord, and sent off into the desert to Azazel, in order to take away the sins of the people. When Aaron sacrifices the bull as a sin offering for himself and his family, he shall take a fire pan full of burning coals from the altar, and 2 handfuls of fine incense, and bring them into the most holy place. There in the Lord's presence he shall put the incense on the fire, and the smoke of the incense will hide the lid of the covenant box, so that he will not see it and die. He shall take some of the bull's blood and wash his fingers sprinkling it. He shall take some of the bull's blood, and with his finger sprinkle it on the front of the lid, and then shall sprinkle some of it 7 times in front of the covenant box. After that he shall kill the goat for the sin offering for the people, bring its blood into the most holy place, and sprinkle it on the lid, and then in front of the covenant box, as he did with the bull's blood. In this way he shall perform the ritual of purification. The ritual to purify the most holy place from the uncleanliness of the people of Israel and from all their sins. He must do this to the tent, because it stands in the middle of the camp, which is ritually unclean. From the time Aaron enters the most holy place to perform the ritual of purification until he comes out, there must be no one in the tent. When he has performed the ritual for himself, his family, and the whole community, he must then go out to the altar for burnt offering and purify it. He must take some of the bull's blood and some of the goat's blood and put it all over the projections at the corners of the altar. With his finger he must sprinkle some of the blood on the altar 7 times. In this way he is to purify it from the sins of the people of Israel and make it holy. When Aaron has finished performing the ritual to purify the most holy place, the rest of the tent of the Lord's presence, and the altar, he shall present to the Lord the live goat chosen for Azazel. He shall put both of his hands on the goat's head and confess over it all evils, sins, and rebellions of the people of Israel, and so transfer them to the goat's head. Then the goat is to be driven off into the desert by someone appointed to do it. The goat will carry all their sins away with them into some uninhabited land. Then Aaron shall go into the tent, take off the priestly garments that he had put on before entering the most holy place, and leave them there. He must take a bath in the holy place and put on his own clothes. After that he shall go out and offer the burnt offering to remove his own sins and those of the people. He shall burn on the altar the fat of the animal for the sin offering. The man who drove the goat into the desert to Azazel must wash his clothes and take a bath before he comes back into camp. The bull and the goat used for the sin offering, whose blood was brought into the most holy place to take away the sin, shall be carried outside the camp and burned. Skin, meat, and intestines shall all be burned. The one who burns them must wash his clothes and take a bath before he returns to camp. The following regulations are to be observed for all the time to come. On the 10th day of the 7th month, the Israelites and the foreigners living among them must fast and must not do any work. On that day, the ritual is to be performed to purify them from all their sins, so that they will be ritually clean. That day is to be a very holy day, one on which they fast and do not work at all. These regulations are to be observed for all time to come. The high priest, properly ordained and consecrated to succeed his father, is to perform the ritual of purification. He shall put on the priestly garments and perform the ritual to purify the most holy place, the rest of the tent of the Lord's presence, the altar, the priest, and all the people of the community. These regulations are to be observed for all time to come. This ritual must be performed once a year to purify the people of Israel from all their sins. So Moses did as the Lord had commanded. Leviticus 17. The Lord commanded Moses to give Aaron and his sons all the people of Israel the following regulations. Any Israelites who kill a cow or a sheep or a goat as an offering to the Lord anywhere except at the entrance of the tent of the Lord's presence have broken the law. They have shed blood and shall no longer be considered God's people. The meaning of this command is that the people of Israel shall now bring to the Lord the animals which they used to kill in the open country. They shall now bring them to the priest at the entrance of the tent and kill them as the fellowship offerings. The priest shall throw the blood against the sides of the altar at the entrance of the tent and burn the fat to produce an odor that is pleasing to the Lord. The people of Israel must no longer be unfaithful to the Lord by killing their animals in the fields as sacrifices to the goat demons. The people of Israel must keep this regulation for all time to come. Any Israelites or any foreigners living in the community who offer a burnt offering or any other sacrifice as an offering to the Lord anywhere except at the entrance of the tent shall no longer be considered God's people. If any Israelites or any foreigners living in the community eat meat with blood still in it, the Lord will turn against them and no longer consider them his people. The life of every living thing is in the blood, and that is why the Lord has commanded that all blood be poured out on the altar to take away the people's sins. Blood, which is life, takes away sins. That is why the Lord has told the people of Israel that neither they nor any foreigners living among them shall eat any meat with the blood still in it. If Israelites or any foreigners living in the community catch an animal or a bird which is ritually clean, they must pour its blood out on the ground and and cover it with dirt. The life of every living thing is in the blood, and that is why the Lord has told the people of Israel that they shall not eat any meat with the blood still in it, and that anyone who does so will no longer be considered one of his people. Any people, Israelite or foreigner, who eat meat from any animal that has died a natural death or has been killed by wild animals must wash their clothes, take a bath, and wait until evening before they are ritually clean. If they do not, they must suffer the consequences. All right, that was Leviticus 15, 16, and 17. Go ahead and go over to Acts 18 now. And remember, if you haven't subscribed yet to the channel, please subscribe now. It really helps us out. Let's see. And if you like the video, also like it as well. Any comments, questions, please leave them at the bottom. All right, Acts 18. After this, Paul left Athens and went on to Corinth. There he met a Jew named Aquila, born in Pontus, who had recently come from Italy with his wife Priscilla, for Emperor Claudius had ordered all the Jews to leave Rome. Paul went to see them and stayed and worked with them because he earned his living by making tents, just as they did. He held discussions in the synagogues every Sabbath, trying to convince both Jews and Greeks. When Silas and Timothy arrived from Macedonia, Paul gave his whole time to preaching the message, testifying to the Jews that Jesus is the Messiah. When they opposed him and said evil things about him, he protested by shaking the dust from his clothes and saying to them, "If you are lost, you yourselves must take the blame for it. I am not responsible. From now on I will go to the Gentiles." So he left them and went to live in the house of the Gentile named Titius Justus, who worshipped God. His house was next to the synagogue. Crispus, who was the leader of the synagogue, believed in the Lord, together with all his family, and many other people in Corinth heard the message, believed, and were baptized. One night Paul had a vision in which the Lord said to him, "Do not be afraid, but keep on speaking and do not give up, for I am with you. No one will be able to harm you, for many in this city are my people." So Paul stayed there for a year and a half, teaching the people of the word of God. While Gallio was made the Roman governor of Achaia, Jews there got together, seized Paul, and took him into the court. "This man," they said, "is trying to persuade people to worship God in a way that is against the law." Paul was about to speak when Gallio said to the Jews, "If there was a matter of some evil crime or wrong that has been committed, it would be reasonable for me to be patient with you Jews. But since it is an argument that about words and names and your own law, you yourselves must settle it. I will not be the judge of such things." And he drove them out of court. Then he grabbed all the Sesthenians, the leader of the synagogue, and beat him in front of the court. But that did not bother Gallio a bit. Paul stayed on with the believers in Corinth for many days, and left them and sailed off with Priscilla and Aquila for Syra. Before sailing from Cenchreae, he had his head shaved because of a vow he had taken. They arrived in Ephesus, where Paul left Priscilla and Aquila. He went into the synagogue and held discussions with the Jews. The people asked him to stay longer, but he would not consent. Instead, he told them as he left, it is the will of God. I will come back to you." So he sailed from Ephesus. When he arrived at Caesarea, he went to Jerusalem and greeted the church, and then went to Antioch. After spending some time there, he left and went through the region of Galatia and Syria, strengthening all the believers. At the time, a Jew named Apollos, who had been born in Alexandria, came to Ephesus. He was an excellent speaker and had a thorough knowledge of scriptures. He had been instructed in the way of the Lord, and with great enthusiasm he proclaimed and taught correctly the facts about Jesus. However, he knew only the baptism of John. He began to speak boldly in the synagogues. When Priscilla and Aquila heard him, they took him home, and with them explained to him more correctly the way of God. Apollos then decided to go to Achaia, so the believers in Ephesus helped him by writing to the believers in Achaia, urging them to welcome him. When he arrived, he was a great help to those who through God's grace had become believers. For with his strong arguments he defended the Jews in public debates. He defeated the Jews in public debates by proving from the scriptures that Jesus is the Messiah. Thank you for tuning into God Talk. I'm your host, JC. And remember, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do so now. Any comments, any questions about the scripture that I just read, please leave them. You never know if it may help someone answer their own questions. And of course, if you like the video, give me a thumbs up. God bless you, and I'll see you again.